high-stakes message is now sailing out of Beijing and into the center of West Asia's most dangerous flashpoint, the Strait of Hormuz. China's defense minister, Admiral Dong Jun, is signaling that Chinese ships, commercial vessels, and by implication the naval presence that helps protect them, will keep moving through the strait even as the region hardens into a geopolitical pressure cooker. And he's framing that movement as more than routine shipping. It's a statement of resolve about trade, energy security, and China's relationship with Iran, delivered at a moment when the world's most important oil corridor is once again being treated like leverage. Speaking publicly on Sunday, Dong said Beijing is watching developments across the Middle East closely, with special attention to the narrow passage that connects the Persian Gulf to open sea. He emphasized that Chinese maritime traffic continues to transit the route, presenting it as uninterrupted and steady despite the surrounding third. REITs, warnings, and military posturing. Then came the line that landed like a diplomatic cue and a warning to outside powers. He said, "Our ships are moving in and out of the waters of the Strait of Hormuz." The point was unmistakable. China intends to stay present, visible, and unbowed in waters that many capitals now treat as a choke point for pressure and potentially for conflict. Dong also linked the Hormuz corridor to China's domestic needs, stressing the scale of China's reliance on stable energy flows. In a region where rhetoric can shift markets within minutes, the emphasis on normal movement was meant to project confidence. It was also meant to suggest that Beijing will not accept a future where access to energy is negotiated through threats or filtered through another power sanctions architecture. But Dong's remarks went further than shipping. He underscored China's long-standing trade and energy agreements with Iran and insisted that Beijing will continue to honor those commitments. In the same breath, he cautioned other nations against interference, language that analysts interpret as aimed at the United States and its partners, whose sanctions and pressure campaigns often attempt to isolate Tehran and penalize those who do business with it. The subtext is that China views its partnership with Iran as a sovereign choice, not a bargaining chip. That posture matters because the Strait of Hormuz is not simply an economic channel, it's geography weaponized. Any perception that the strait is closing or that certain countries will be favored and others blocked immediately becomes a strategic issue. It also becomes a military issue because any effort to guarantee passage can quickly evolve into escort missions, patrols, and the kind of close contact incidents that can spiral. By highlighting Chinese traffic moving through the strait, Dong appeared to acknowledge Iran's influence over the approaches while reinforcing Beijing's expectation that the corridor remains open to Chinese transit. It fits a wider strategy, protecting sea lanes from East Asia to the Gulf, ensuring energy flows stay insulated from political turbulence whenever possible. Strategists describe China as trying to occupy two roles at once, stakeholder and self-styled stabilizer, publicly urging de-escalation while making clear it won't concede on core economic interests. But the timing also raises the stakes because this isn't happening in a vacuum. It is unfolding against the backdrop of a fragile ceasefire, shifting military rules of engagement, and competing powers crowding the same narrow maritime space. In Washington, the Strait of Hormuz has become central to the latest phase of the confrontation. The United States has tied the corridor directly to its ceasefire conditions and to the broader effort to pressure Tehran. And now Beijing's language suggests China is not only monitoring the situation, but also preparing to defend its own access without asking permission. That assertive tone can complicate delicate diplomacy in a standoff already packed with armed actors and high political stakes. Another heavyweight voice, especially one with major naval capacity and a deep energy stake, adds a new variable. The stakes rise further with a separate but connected claim now circulating in U.S. intelligence and Western reporting that China may be preparing to deliver weapons to Iran, potentially including air defense systems, even as ceasefire talks struggle to hold. According to reporting that cites people familiar with U.S. intelligence assessments, Beijing is expected to deliver new air defense capabilities to Iran within weeks. The allegation comes with a second claim that Iran may be using the ceasefire window not only to pause fighting, but to replenish key weapon systems with help from foreign partners. Some sources describe indications that shipments could be routed through third countries to mask their true origin, designed to reduce political fallout and complicate tracking and attribution. The specific weapons described are among the most consequential in modern asymmetric warfare. Man-portable air defense systems, or MANPADS, shoulder-fired missiles that can threaten aircraft at low altitude. These systems don't need a runway, a radar network, or a large crew. They can be carried, hidden, and fired by small teams, and they force even technologically superior air forces to change how they operate. In a conflict where air dominance is often described as decisive, the availability of handheld air defense weapons can be a spoiler, and that connects directly to the most vivid public example in this conflict so far. the downing of a U.S. fighter jet over Iran. In a public appearance, President Donald Trump described the danger U.S. forces faced flying missions deep over Iranian territory, explaining that even after strikes against air defenses and radar, the threat doesn't disappear because some of the most lethal weapons can be fired by a person with a tube on their shoulder. He spoke about the difference between flying at night and in daylight, describing U.S. night vision advantage in unusually personal terms, then returned to the moment of impact and how quickly things can go wrong. He said, "We have goggles that nobody, we have goggles." He argued that night operations are safer for U.S. forces because of the equipment and training advantage, while emphasizing that the mission he described had been carried out in daylight over what he called extraordinarily hostile territory. Trump's account then zeroed in on what he said hit the aircraft. Asterisk, he said what hit this one was a handheld shoulder missile, heat-seeking missile. Asterisk, he described the missile as having been drawn into the engine, turning a single shot into a catastrophic loss. That detail matters because it illustrates why the alleged shipment, if it exists, would be so alarming to U.S. commanders. Even a limited number of MANPADS can reshape flight profiles, raise the cost of operations, and increase risk for aircraft supporting rescues, surveillance, refueling, and strike missions. Trump's comments also underline something else. In wars like this, a ceasefire isn't always a cooling period. It can be a rearming period. It can be a window for replenishment. And from Washington's perspective, any sign that Tehran is resupplying, especially with advanced defensive systems, can be read as preparation for the next round. But Beijing is denying the allegations outright. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington rejected U.S. claims that China is rushing air defense systems to Iran, describing the reports as false and urging the United States to stop what it called sensational accusations. The statement was categorical. He said China has never provided weapons to any party to the conflict. The information in question is untrue. The spokesperson added that China considers itself a responsible major country that fulfills international obligations and urged what it called restraint in public messaging. That denial sets up a familiar pattern. Intelligence-based allegations from U.S. sources, categorical rejections from Beijing, and an information environment where the true status of shipments, if any, can be difficult to verify quickly, especially if routed indirectly. Yet the context makes the question harder to ignore. Iran's military and economic relationships with China and Russia are long established, and Iran's survival under heavy sanctions has depended in part on external partnerships, whether through energy sales, technology, or forms of security cooperation. Iran has also played a major role in supplying drones to Russia for its war in Ukraine, while simultaneously selling a significant share of its sanctioned oil to China. That triangular reality, Tehran, Moscow, Beijing, has been central to how Western governments interpret the strategic balance in multiple theaters at once. And as the Strait of Hormuz becomes the corridor through which not only oil but also political power is projected, the question of who supports whom, economically, diplomatically, and militarily, becomes inseparable from whether ships can safely pass. All of this is unfolding while Washington and Tehran attempt to navigate high-stakes peace talks in Islamabad. Pakistan talks described as the most direct engagement between the two sides in decades, but also talks that have already shown just how wide the gaps remain. The ceasefire that made these talks possible is fragile and time-limited. Each side is weighing whether diplomacy can lock in strategic gains or whether the pause is simply the calm before another escalation. And the Strait of Hormuz sits at the center of those calculations because it is both a literal supply line and a symbolic one, a route that signals whether pressure can be applied, whether threats will be answered, and whether outside Po. Words can shape events from the sea. That is why Dong Jun's language matters. It wasn't a call for a summit. It wasn't a plea for calm. It was Beijing planting a flag, quietly but unmistakably saying China will keep moving through the strait and will not accept interference with what it describes as legitimate trade and energy commitments. It also signals a larger reality. The world's most important oil artery is no longer just a U.S. Iran flashpoint. It is increasingly a crossroads where multiple major powers see their own vital interests on the line, interests they may now be willing to defend with more than words. For markets, that means uncertainty. For shipping, that means risk premiums and rerouting. For diplomats, it means more voices at the table and more red lines to navigate. And for militaries operating in and around the Gulf, it means a narrower margin for error in one of the most crowded, sensitive maritime corridors on Earth. The immediate questions now stack up fast. Will the ceasefire in the region hold long enough to produce a broader agreement, or will it expire into renewed strikes and retaliation? Will the Strait of Hormuz remain functionally open for international traffic, or will access become selective, managed by threat, permission, or force? And will accusations of weapons transfers become the spark for new sanctions, new interdictions, or even a clash at sea? China is insisting it wants de-escalation. It is also insisting it will protect its trade lifelines so those positions can coexist until the day they can't. And on that day, the world will be watching the same narrow stretch of water where oil tankers, container ships, patrol vessels, and national ambitions all pass within miles of each other, sometimes within sight, trying to avoid the single moment that turns a warning into a war.